Hey guys, we've got an interesting video today. As you can see, I'm playing Arlecchino. Arlecchino was very popular on release, but I would say ever since Mavuika came out, she's definitely been overshadowed. But one of my viewers today is joining us on this video since they've done a lot of Arlecchino theory crafting and they want to share that with you and go over what they've learned.
Hello, I'm the viewer in question.
We've got theory crafting, we've got gameplay, we've got general analysis. Maybe by the end of this video, you'll realize you've been underrating Arlecchino. Maybe there's a lot that you learned. Maybe this video will help you dust off your Arlecchino. Give her another go, give her another chance. So just to clarify, so you're coming at this from both like the gameplay perspective and you're going to show us some calculations, right? And maybe you might show us some speedrunning.
Yes. Actually, I will not show speedrun. We will talk about it because I think speedrunning as well is one of the things about Arlecchino that is different from every other character. I think basically everything about her, it is lacking information. Calcs that might very well be like completely true on paper are actually completely different in reality.
So I guess we could start off with what makes Arlecchino unique, do you think?
Well, first of all, obviously she can be healed, and in return she gets a 40% pyro damage boost, just completely unconditional. And I think that specific, like give her a damage boost but take away her healing, was made by the devs to encourage us to really invest more into her and take advantage more of her and play her kind of like a glass cannon. And I think most people haven't been doing that or haven't been doing it enough.
I guess some people might say that this pyro damage bonus is self-buff and sort of like the glass cannon playstyle, that is kind of similar to how Hu Tao works.
Yeah, actually, while it might look similar on the surface, Hu Tao's damage bonus is actually conditional, which is actually not obtainable on every team. Meanwhile, Arlecchino, all you have to do is be in combat.
So basically, if you guys didn't know, I'm sure a lot of you already do, but you apply her skill onto enemies and then you wait a bit and then you can do a charge attack. And then what happens is her damage starts off really high and then gradually goes down. The bond of life you can see on her health bar, it gradually goes down.
So that what you just talked about, it actually is completely unique to her. That level of flexibility when it comes to front-loading damage, okay? I think that's the most important part. Number 3, her numbers, just raw numbers, change depending on how many enemies there are on the field and also how many rotations are you doing. So for example, while she might do like 5.8 thousand motion value on a single enemy in one rotation, that would change because you would get an extra 15% if you had 3 enemies, right? And we go up to 6,200 motion value, right? That's a pretty big difference, right? I think that also is one of the reasons she's misunderstood, because for every character in the game, up until Arlecchino, all the theorycrafters would have one template and one scenario usually, which they would use to calculate every character. Naturally, when Arlecchino came out, they did the same thing, right? Like, why would you do anything different? And I think once you start like digging into all of these small things, which add up over time, like they can completely transform the way you look at Arlecchino.
You know, it's quite interesting you say that actually, because as people on this channel know, I've never been a big fan of how a lot of people do Mualani theory crafting, because she actually scales quite similar to Arlecchino, I guess, in a way. Yeah, how she tags enemies for her sharky bites, this actually does scale in speed depending on how many enemies there are. If you're able to do her normal attacks way faster in AoE, that means you get out completely different numbers. To be fair, in AoE, the damage you do is only a percentage. Like you can see here, it's 72% of the original damage, but that's usually counteracted by the fact that you're attacking way faster. So I guess Arlecchino kind of can work similar as well. Like both these sorts of characters, it is very tricky to like theory craft them because they work completely differently depending on the exact scenario that you're in. So let's get into the calcs then. So just a quick disclaimer before we show your calcs. So you're not only looking at KQM standards, which are like the typical low investment standards. Maybe they have level 9 talents. So you're looking at slightly higher investment, similar to like what I do. So you'll be looking at sort of builds.
Slightly higher, maybe.
Yeah, you'll be looking at builds closer to your kind of investment, which is more like 30, 32 substats. We're going to be looking at level 10 talents. We're going to be looking at signature weapons, but we can mess around with some of the settings a bit. You have KQM calcs as well. You have low investment calcs, but I think what you're going to show us is how some of these calcs would change. You'll probably be showing us how some of her damage will scale very well with investment.
Like one of the things I want to mention is that this is like a very honest mistake. I think if I myself was a content creator at the time, I would have made the same mistake.
So what are you showing us now?
Now I would like to get into comparison between neuvillette specifically. Before I do that, I want to say I have no beef. I personally think this might be a hot take. I personally think neuvillette is perhaps a little bit overrated, and I think he is one of the characters that gets compared to Arlecchino the most. But I would just like to showcase that the difference between neuvillette and Arlecchino is a lot bigger than you probably think. So like if you had a line where neuvillette was here and mavuika was here, I think most people would say that like Arlecchino is like kind of like in between them, like maybe here, maybe here, maybe here. Reasonably more damage than neuvillette, but has a lot less quality of life than neuvillette. But the real position in terms of purely damage, it's not here, it's not here, it's not here, it's like here.
So what calcs have you got to support that information?
If we just look at the numbers, in single target, Arlecchino's best team compared to neuvillette's best team just does 50,000 more damage per second. And you could maybe tweak this number, shorten the rotation by a little bit, up the fanfare a little bit. You can, but like it's not gonna make a difference. And I think at 50,000 DPS, I think that's the point at which it maybe becomes acceptable to start asking questions like, okay, how much damage is it worth to trade off for better quality of life and better AoE?
Okay, one thing I would say is you are focusing on DPS, but if you look at the damage per rotation, obviously neuvillette's rotation is longer, but you know, DPS does only really tell one part of the story. One of neuvillette's advantages, I would say, is that because the rotations are so long, he does allow you to push through thresholds. So I can see here, you've got your neuvillette's damage rotation 2.58 million. And Farina's damage on top of that as well. Whereas you got your Arlecchino at 2.5 million.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. While that may be applicable in some chambers, I feel like these days we don't really get that many chambers where they're just like around 3.1 million HP total, where you can just cruise and not have to worry about any special mechanics, any natlan, night soul, any pillars to climb, any specific shields to break, etc. By the time you do finish one neuvillette rotation, you have almost finished 2 Arlecchino rotations.
But in regards to neuvillette versus Arlecchino, what people would say is that neuvillette has better AoE. So what are your thoughts on that?
I will definitely not argue on that one. Neuvillette has both objectively, subjectively, however you want to put it, it's just better. It's just better AoE. First of all, I think Arlecchino's AoE is underrated, which we're going to show examples of later. But even if she wasn't, even if she was completely single target locked, single target is still the more prevalent type of content in this game. I went through every floor 12 of every abyss from Neuvillette's release up until now. I counted every wave of floor 12 and checked if it was AoE or single target. And as it turns out, there are still slightly more single target than there are AoE ones. And on top of that, in Imaginarium Theater, every boss chamber is a single target chamber. But for all of these AoE chambers, I've also double checked to see which one of them Arlecchino's AoE was good enough to hit multiple or all of the enemies. And what I got was maybe 66 out of the 88 chambers, 75% of them. So while this Neuvillette team might be doing 107k DPS, Farina's doing a decent part of it, and she does not have AoE like Neuvillette.
Okay, so the neuvillette comparisons are fair, but I think what a lot of the viewers are interested in is the comparison with mavuika, because a lot of people feel like that is the big comparison here.
Well, first of all, I'm not delusional. I'm aware that mavuika is comically broken and that she absolutely has certain advantages over Arlecchino that just cannot be changed. For example, she has off-field pyro application, right? That might be priceless to somebody, right? And also her speedrun performance. I cannot argue with those. When it comes to numbers, yeah, mavuika is definitely stronger, and again, like, comically broken, right? Nobody needs even close to this amount of DPS to more than comfortably clear Abyss.
Yeah, I think there's no point debating that mavuika obviously does more damage, but maybe you can still show us some stuff that Arlecchino does bring to the table.
When it comes to actually playing mavuika and playing Arlecchino, like, from what I've seen, most of the cases, both characters are gonna need 2 rotations to clear. And like, we're not talking about speedrunning, of course. I'm subscribed to like 5 or 4 different YouTube channels who like regularly post like more casual runs of like all the characters. And honestly, from what I've seen compared to my own runs, mavuika isn't actually like very noticeably better. She's maybe like 5 to 7% faster. So yeah, like, these days we have a lot of content where it's basically impossible to run rotate because there's usually some gimmick that we need to do, like some elemental shield, some amount of application, some reaction that you need to trigger. And if we look at just the numbers, right, on the first rotation, mavuika's numbers are really big, but they drop off quite a lot because that TTDS is doing a lot of heavy lifting. When you compare that to Arlecchino, yes, on the second rotation she will lose TTDS, but she will get a lot more Bond of Life here. The average between them is only like 2k DPS difference. This is honestly a scenario where the numbers, in my opinion, in my experience, reflect reality. Now, again, mavuika does have her infinite interruption resistance. They both have a shield, but still. And she has objectively better AoE. One other thing I want to mention about Arlecchino is that if you invest like getting her C1 or maybe her signature weapon and get a really good build, she can oftentimes clear Abyss chambers by herself. Right? No team, no quirky Abyss blessings, no fishing for crit cards. No, nothing.
So this is your gameplay that we're watching right now.
Again, this is not every Abyss, obviously. Sometimes it's like objectively impossible. You need to have some sort of gimmick, break some sort of shield. I remember one of the quotes you said about neuvillette. You said neuvillette is the team. And I would like to argue that Arlecchino is the team, and she just does it better.
Okay, so those were the character comparisons. One of the other things you did mention was how people might not be playing her as well as they could be.
One of the most common mistakes I see is people canceling their charge attacks on the Citlali teams. You should never do that, because Citlali, you can expect around 50 to 60k DPR from Citlali, but like, if you don't get the melt on her big hit, it's actually not that big of a difference, right? If you lose the charge attack damage, it's actually is quite a big difference, right?
Wait, hold on. Let me just show that in game then.
E and 1Q, it's important for Citlali.
I mean, the enemies died. That seemed to work. Let me do that again. Yeah, the enemy's dying very, very fast.
Another mistake I see people make, not very frequently, but like sometimes I see people continuously using her normal attacks on a new wave when they can easily swap out and reapply VV. I think that's because most people are still used to like their characters losing infusion after switching out.
So yeah, let me set up again. And because the enemy dies so quickly, I should rebuff. So rebuff, keep my damage going. Because Arlecchino is one of the characters who keeps her infusion and she's not on a time limit. So there's no real, you could say, rush for me to get out her damage as fast as possible. You can take your time with it.
And I think last and one of the biggest ones is I often see people not take advantage of her AoE. Her AoE it's sneakily large, like larger than most people would expect. I think if you just position yourself a little bit better, angle yourself in a way that you make a line relative to the enemies, you can sometimes double or even triple her DPS by just damaging 2 enemies or 3 enemies instead of 1 at a time.
Yeah, you actually made some very good points, especially in regards to like how to execute her strategies and how to effectively use her. Did you have a final closing statement about your experience with Arlecchino?
I think Arlecchino is quite a bit stronger than people give her credit for, and on top of that, she's really easy and fun to play. She's a character who gives you a lot of freedom in team building and executions. Her normal attacks look really cool in my opinion, and there are a lot of ways you can take advantage of her AoE. She's also really easy, especially in some of the monopyro teams, like Lanyan is such a good character. She's so cheap. Again, I'm not delusional. I do think Mavuika, like overall, is still the better pick. If you already have her, you should give her a try again. And if you don't, and you're looking for a really good, really solid, really cracked out hyper carry, she should be one of your biggest options. Thank you.
And with that, I finished the Chamber 1 solo. Let's go.
Oh, you did? Gee.
So yeah, thanks viewer for coming and educating us on Arlecchino. I would say I learned quite a bit, and I do think she's very strong. Maybe not the strongest, but one of the strongest. I think it's fair enough to say. And yeah, I do like her gameplay, and I think you did a really good job explaining all the different intricacies. Yeah, hopefully you guys found this helpful. And even some of you who already play Arlecchino, maybe you guys were looking for more information on Arlecchino. So this video could help you. And also people who maybe don't play Arlecchino, maybe this video convinced you to try her out. Or like I said in the beginning of the video, convinced you to pick her up again. Yeah, thanks viewer.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah, we'll see you guys with the next video.